to be entertaining, the story really has to get a hold of you. It has to grip you and sort of carry you along with it, and even make you lose track of yourself for a minute and just get buried in the story. And that's what this film does. You
Wow.
will feel like you're experiencing Bonhoeffer's life along with him. It's an immersive and a real roller coaster ride emotionally. I mean, it's got all the emotional aspects that you could imagine. I still get goosebumps. I've seen this. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen all or parts of this film, and I still get goosebumps. Uh, it still gives me chills, and it still makes me cry, and it still makes me laugh. I mean, there's just brilliant stuff in here, and so it is very entertaining. But because it's a story about a man who is sold out to Jesus and who is living in the bravest and most uncompromising way in the darkest of times, it's also a very inspiring movie.
Yeah.
And I think you'll come out of the theater wanting to be the best version of yourself. And as we like to say in one of our hashtag campaigns, Bonhoeffer brave. Um, I think that's a great way to sum up what this motivates you to do. It makes you want to be braver.
Well, welcome to Cultural Catalyst, where we help you learn how to live fully alive, co-labor with God, and change the world. I am your host, Kris Vallotton, and today I have a good friend of mine, John Scanlon. He's an accomplished legal advisor, producer, extensive experience in business, and you're one of the producers of this new movie, Bonhoeffer, which we're so excited about.
Thank you, Kris. Thanks for that intro. Yeah, we're very excited about it too.
This is an exciting project. And you and I was just telling you, you don't probably remember this, but we had a conversation 6 years ago, probably, when you were still partly trying to fund this project.
Yeah.
And this is a beautiful project. John, before we talk about the project just for a minute, tell me a little bit about your faith journey, how you found Christ, and then we'll jump into the project.
Wow, that's a great question. What a great opener. Yeah, I'm happy to share. It's kind of an unusual story. I grew up in a house with a really strong faith tradition, but I always felt like there was something missing from that part of my life. And when I was about 16, I decided I was going to go on a spiritual quest. I remember telling my dad at the dinner table, I don't know what's out there, and I don't know who I'm looking for. It could be Jesus, it could be Muhammad, it could be Buddha, but I'm going to go out there and find it. It's the kind of thing you say when you're 16.
Exactly.
Right? So I started just kind of trying to open my eyes and my ears to any kind of spiritual influence, and it was crazy. I had Mormons come knocking on the door. I had Jehovah's Witnesses. I had any kind of traveling evangelist. I somehow encountered them. I started seeing signs of spirituality everywhere. And one day I was sitting on the steps of my school library eating lunch, and this guy walked up to me, and we're of an age where we can remember the Chick tracts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this guy was straight out of a Chick tract. He was tall and gangly. He was carrying like a 40-pound Bible, and he just walked right up to me, and he said, "Do you know Jesus is your personal Lord and Savior?" And I looked back at him and I said, "No, but tell me more. Have a seat. Tell me all about it." So, which I think is the first time he'd ever heard anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just happened to be the right moment in my life. So he sat down and he kind of walked me through there's a set of verses called the Romans Road.
Yeah.
The Romans Road to Salvation in the book of Romans. And he just took me through, creation, fall, depravity, redemption in Jesus. And at the end of it, he said, so now would you like to pray to receive Christ? And I said, no, but thanks for the talk. So those verses just kind of burned their way into my heart. And I remember thinking through them and thinking, well, this really sounds right. This sounds like what I've been looking for. And so on my way home from school that night, I just knelt in a field and I said, God, if you're real and if everything that Mike just explained to me is true, then I want to know who you are. And I just had this unbelievable, all five senses encounter with the Holy Spirit that,
Wow.
yeah, just set me on fire. That was an amazing experience. And yeah, I've been walking with him ever since. So,
That's amazing.
yeah.
Okay, filmmaking. What
Yeah.
led you into the world of filmmaking? Because you're a business guy, right? You have a
Yeah.
doctorate of law, do you?
I have a Juris Doctor, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
The regular law degree.
So
Yeah.
not kind of the, you know, I don't know. It's not. It doesn't seem like the path to filmmaking.
It's not. I was not by any means on a path anywhere near filmmaking. When I started on that journey, I'm going to sound like a mystic here because I'm describing these strange spiritual experiences to some ears, but I was at a men's conference in upstate New York. It was actually the New Canaan Society, if anybody's familiar with that. And I remember at the time I was sort of questing, like, I don't feel that fulfilled in my career and what I'm doing. I love practicing law. I love working with entrepreneurs. I love building businesses. But what else is there? What else can I set my hand to? And I remember during a break in one of the sessions, I got some alone time. And out of the blue, I heard a voice in my head very clearly say, I am going to move you into the film industry. And I sort of, I knew it was not my voice.
Yeah,
And I remember my first emotional reaction was, well, that can't be God because that's too good to be true. Surely he wants me to go be a missionary in Papua New Guinea or do something hard and
totally.
challenge. Filmmaking sounds like too much fun to be true. Anyway, the very next session, I'm sitting next to this guy, and he introduces himself as Lance Wallnow.
Oh,
I had no
Lance.
idea who that was. No idea who that was. And he looked at me and he goes, I feel like God's going to move you into the movie industry.
Wow.
Out of the blue, like no context. We weren't talking about film. He just laid that on me. And I thought, well, okay, I guess there's my confirmation that it actually was God's voice. And sure enough, I actually made my first film later that year. I hustled over to Uganda. I found a subject. I shot a documentary. I got it on TV a couple of times, and I've been working in film and television ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so Dietrich Bonhoeffer, there are a lot of people in my audience that probably have never heard that name.
Hmm.
So why don't we begin with telling his story, and then we can talk about the film.
Yeah, you bet. So Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a brilliant young student. He was a member of an aristocratic German family who grew up in the 1930s in Germany, and then 1920s, 1930s. Came of age in the 1930s in Germany, and was there for the rise of Hitler, the rise of the Nazis, and the takeover of that society by that ideology. He kind of went against the grain of his family. His dad was a very famous neurologist. His The rest of his family was very sort of professional or military. He became a theologian, which was sort of scandalous within his family, but he was a brilliant theologian and was actually sent to the United States to study at Union Theological Seminary in New York, which is where he ran into a gentleman named Frank Fisher, played brilliantly in our film by David Johnson. And Frank introduced him to Abyssinian Baptist Church, which was this vibrant, totally sold out church in Harlem, still is today. And Abyssinian Baptist was very, very focused at the time on the civil rights struggle in America. And he saw faith in action and the fight
So
against
Bonhoeffer
injustice.
was in America?
Yeah, he was in America more than once, but he spent a good part of his time in seminary in New York, between Manhattan and Harlem, or between downtown New York and Harlem. Yeah, and he totally fell in love with gospel music. He fell in love with Abyssinian Baptist. He became a good friend of the pastors, Adam Clayton Powell, and Frank Fisher just introduced him to a dimension of spirituality, a dimension of following Jesus that he'd never really encountered. For Bonhoeffer, it was all head knowledge and theology, and he got turned on and sold out in Harlem, and took that back to Germany with him, and really began fighting in earnest on behalf of Jews and others who were victims of the Nazi regime. So he wrote, he spoke on the radio, he pastored, he ran an underground seminary. He kept fighting in all these ways he could think of. He led a movement called the Confessing Church, which was basically, in Germany, they have a state church to this day. It's actually part of the government.
Yeah.
The church, the ministers are paid out of taxes. So it's very much integrated into the government. And he, in a really dramatic move with others, including Martin Niemöller, another famous German pastor, formed the Confessing Church, which was a breakaway and rejected the idea that the German church should be part of the Nazi state. So he was ultimately involved in a plot to assassinate Hitler, which was an incredibly dramatic move for someone who was a professing pacifist.
He was in a plot. Okay, wait. No, I remember this now, but this is a huge point. He was in a plot to assassinate Hitler.
Yes, that's ultimately, he paid the ultimate price. He was actually executed while he was imprisoned in a concentration camp about 2 weeks before the war ended, sadly. And the crime he was executed for was participating in a bomb plot to kill Hitler, which is what we portray in the film.
And it was true.
Oh yeah, very much so. He wasn't, he didn't strap on a bomb himself, but he was very much one of the plotters and one of the facilitators of the plot.
That is a very interesting story, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely amazing the way it's brought to life too. I mean, this movie does a brilliant job of capturing, in particular, I think, those two aspects of his time.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. So, how do you see Christian films, especially historical ones, impacting culture? Like, first of all, what do you hope to? Is this, from your perspective, is this film entertainment, or is there a bigger message?
Well, I want to say yes to both questions.
Okay.
Because I do think, I think, Ingmar Bergman, who's a famous Swedish director, said that motion pictures are the highest form of art that we have now. And I think that's true. They combine, different elements, visual and auditory and many other crafts in a kind of a unified whole. And they have the ability to really inspire. I mean, they really do have the ability to transform lives, as powerful art does. But what makes people go to theaters and sit for 2 hours and tell all their friends about it is a film that's entertaining. And I don't necessarily mean by that it's frivolous or that it's just a way of passing time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, to be entertaining, a story really has to get a hold of you. It has to grip you and sort of carry you along with it, and even make you lose track of yourself for a minute and just get buried in the story. And that's what this film does. You will feel like you're experiencing Bonhoeffer's life along with him. It's an immersive and a real roller coaster ride emotionally. I mean, it's got all the emotional aspects that you could imagine. I still get goosebumps. I've seen this. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen all or parts of this film, and I still get goosebumps. It still gives me chills, and it still makes me cry, and it still makes me laugh. I mean, there's just brilliant stuff in here, and so it is very entertaining. But because it's a story about a man who is sold out to Jesus and who is living in the bravest and most uncompromising way in the darkest of times, it's also a very inspiring movie. And I think you'll come out of the theater wanting to be the best version of yourself. And as we like to say in one of our hashtag campaigns, Bonhoeffer brave. I think that's a great way to sum up what this motivates you to do. It makes you want to be braver.
Now, Eric Metaxas wrote a book on Bonhoeffer. Does this, and I know him, he was in my living room. Sheesh, that had to be 15 years ago, maybe 10, 12, 15 years ago, telling me about his book. Is this, do you use this book at all as a reference to the movie?
Well, when Eric wrote his book in 2010 on Bonhoeffer, it became a New York Times bestseller. Yeah, it's been a while. At the time he wrote it, people knew about Bonhoeffer. There were people reading Cost of Discipleship and Life Together and his other works, but there wasn't any kind of, you couldn't go to the bookstore and say, hey, I want that Bonhoeffer book, and have the clerk know what you were talking about. But after Eric put Bonhoeffer on the map, everybody was talking about Bonhoeffer. And I would say, in a way, that book, um, was one of the things that drew our attention to Bonhoeffer. But there's no connection between the book and the film.
None.
So
So you
yeah,
guys
there's
didn't
nothing.
you didn't collaborate with Eric or anything?
No. This is an original screenplay by Todd Carmanicki, our brilliant writer director, about Bonhoeffer's life. And there are a lot of sources of material for that, a lot of public record, a lot of his own writings, and the story we're telling is unique. I think it'd be hard to adapt Eric's book, which is hundreds and hundreds of pages with lots and lots of detail, into a film. Might make a great 10-part miniseries,
Yeah.
but it'd be hard to turn that into a movie.
Do you think that, have you read Eric's book?
Yes,
Do
yeah,
you
and I read it probably a year or two after it came out, so I was a
do
little
you do
little
you,
slow. My wife read it. I think that she read like one of the first editions.
do
She read it
you
very.
think that is that book accurate, or is it?
Oh, I'm not enough of a Bonhoeffer scholar, even at this point, to really know. I know Eric was. The sense I got when I read it was he was trying to be very, 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 very faithful to the source material.
Yeah,
But I know there's controversy about that. I'm not qualified to say.
he's a
I
he's
hope so.
he's a brilliant man and a great author for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, successful author. Yep.
So, what have you learned about Bonhoeffer's life and faith as you kind
Oh,
of got into this project, and
yeah.
how about, how has it affected you personally, or
Hmm.
has it? Maybe I should ask that question first.
That's a good starting point. It very definitely has. I mean, one of the interesting things about having worked on this film for 12 years is we've wrestled with different ways to tell his story. At one point, this film was a kind of dark psychological thriller, and it was, and sort of glad we didn't go down that road.
Yeah, me too.
Um, and another point, um, we had a kind of almost like a James Bond character in Bonhoeffer. Um, we couldn't find a way to really tell his story in a way that kind of resonated for everyone and that seemed sort of true to his spirit. I think we unlocked that code. Todd Carmanicki really wrote a story here that is. I feel like I know the guy. I feel like he's one of my best friends at this point, Bonhoeffer, that is. And I think it's just because Todd so clearly sees into his soul and understands what motivates him and understands how he responded to the challenges in his life. I think for me, the Bonhoeffer quote that comes to mind when I think about him as a man is, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. And
He tells him to come and die.
come and die, that's the invitation. It's really profound, and it means a lot of things, but ultimately it means, sort of the best we can hope for is to give our lives in service of a great cause.
Yeah.
And there's no greater cause than Jesus. Um, and that's ultimately what Bonhoeffer does. And he does it, with this beatific smile on his face, because he knows he's embracing, his destiny, and that the next thing he sees will be Jesus telling him, well done, good and faithful servant. And I love the way he lived with his eyes on eternity and not on the turmoil and the strife and the battle sort of raging around him. Um, and I'd like to think that there are moments in my life when I've been focused on those things, and his example has inspired me to lift up my vision.
Well, was he married?
He was not married. Late in life, he had he was already in prison, and he developed a friendship that turned into a romance with one of his former students. And it's a beautiful love story. And a couple of our scripts had it in the film. We ultimately just, it didn't work as part of the story, but it is an interesting aspect of his life. reading his letters to her and vice versa is an emotional experience. And Eric in his book reproduces a lot of those if anyone's interested.
Where did you guys film this at?
So we filmed in Belgium and Ireland.
Wow.
Yeah, we wanted to film it in Europe. Most of our cast is European, thankfully. I say for the purposes of the production. So we shot it in a couple of places in Belgium, several places in Belgium, and several places in Ireland over a winter, which I wouldn't recommend to other filmmakers. Go in the spring if you can. But
Was it like snowing and that sort of thing?
Yeah, very much so. Um, it was there's this beautiful church that we filmed one of Bonhoeffer's most famous sermon. He did preach from the pulpit occasionally, and he gave this incredible sermon, which really just in some ways sort of the highlight of the film, um, in terms of the spoken parts. And we were we set up in this sanctuary, and there had been times when we'd been outside for hours shooting and setting up and shooting, and so I think there was a sense, among the cast and the crew, oh, thank God we finally get to be indoors for a few minutes. And it was probably colder in that church than it was outside. It was freezing. There's Heidi has a picture of me and my wife with every article of clothing I had on set piled on top of myself. I look like a yak or something. I have all these, coats piled on top of my head just to stay warm. And our poor extras, we had a full congregation sitting in the pews of extras, and they were in street clothes, but they had all been issued thermal underwear, so they were sitting there, trying not to die of hypothermia. And Jonas Dassler, our unbelievably gifted lead actor playing Dietrich Bonhoeffer, is in the pulpit with not a whole lot more on. He's got an ecclesiastical gown, but that's kind of it. And there was this unbelievable moment where probably from what you've heard about Hollywood and about the film industry generally, you would guess many of them are very spiritual, but you don't have a lot of Bible scholars, let's put it that way, in that mix. So a lot of the people in the cast and a lot of the people in the pews, a lot of the extras were hearing these words. Dietrich, Freudian slip, is quoting from the book of Matthew. And a few of his lines are just verbatim verses from that book. And, there's a natural moment where you pause and cut, kind of reset up. And when he did it for the first time, Todd called cut, and everyone in the congregation stood up, and every cast member stood up, and every crew member stood up and just gave him a standing ovation.
Wow.
This is a beautiful moment. It just gives me chills sitting here thinking about it. And that was the spirit of the set. Really, it was. So many people came up to me and to others and said, "We're so grateful that you're making such a beautiful, inspirational movie. Thank you for making this incredible film." And they're there to do a job. They don't have to like the story.
Yeah.
But many of them did. I think they were profoundly moved. And it was a really a very kind of holy experience just being on the set of that film, even though we didn't do in every other respect you would have thought you were on a Hollywood set, but that spirit was present there for most of the shooting.
How long did it take you to film that, and then why did you do it in the winter? Like obviously you could have chosen another season.
Yeah, it's funny. I there's so many aspects of making this movie leading up to production and then the shooting. There's a moment when you're doing one of these things, and if you ever sit through the end credits of a film, and I hope you do for ours, you'll see it's just this cast of thousands. You have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people working on a film, and it just scrolls forever past all of these names, job titles that you may not know.
Yeah.
And getting all of those people together at the right time in the same place is just a monumental task. And it just happened that was when everyone was available. That's often what it comes down to.
Really?
Yeah. It just worked out that was when we could shoot. That was when Todd was free. That was when our first assistant director and our director of photography and our actors were all free. So even though it wasn't a fun experience weather-wise, it was the best time to go.
Man, that's crazy. Now
Yeah.
you had to raise $30 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
And
did you do? I mean, we just interviewed the producer of The Chosen, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and that's very interesting the way they crowdsourced that, right? That was
yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they raised like 10 million at first, and then they've raised so much more since then to do the second season, third. But how did you guys? Did you try pitching this to Hollywood, or how did that go?
No, we decided that probably wasn't going to work. We have very talented lead producers, Mano and Camille Campouris, just brilliant, lovely, and very dedicated, passionate couple who embarked us on a roadshow. We did it like a private equity raise for a startup. We put together a pitch package. We went to 5 different cities. We got groups of people together, and we said, "Here's the movie we want to make. Here's who we're going to hire, and here's the kind of business case for it." And very fortunate to have raised most of the money pretty quickly.
Really?
Well, I mean, I think every now and then you find if you're really really blessed, you find a story that needs to be told and hasn't been told in kind of a big way. I mean, there have been other Bonhoeffer movies. Some of them are very good, but they're all very sort of small scale. This is the first major motion picture, in wide release around the world that's ever been done about him. And in many cases, we would tell potential investors that, and they would say, "Well, that's impossible. I know the story of Bonhoeffer. It's incredibly cinematic. It must have been on screen at some point." So I think you find there was a lot of eagerness because you had people who were very, very happy about the idea of a Bonhoeffer movie, and trusted Mano and Camille to steward it well, which I think they've done A+ job on. And yeah, and now I think we're vindicating that trust of our investors, and I'm hoping it becomes a huge hit and they all make tons of money.
Yeah, me too. He died at like 36, didn't he?
I was 39.
39. Was he was like hung in prison or something, right?
Yeah, he was. He was. Naked, by the way. It was a very kind of degrading death, which is what the Nazis sort of specialized in. And he was killed on Hitler's personal orders. His name was found in a secret file in the house of a leader of the resistance inside the German military. There was a group of generals and admirals and who were dedicated to overthrowing Hitler. They called themselves the Black Orchestra, and it was led by a man named Admiral Canaris. And Canaris's house was raided. He had been taking extensive notes about all of the resistance activity because he figured if he was ever captured or surrendered to the Allies, he had to be able to prove that he wasn't one of the bad guys. Well, unfortunately, he wrote Bonhoeffer's name down along with a list of the other participants in the bomb plot, and that was enough to sentence Bonhoeffer to death.
So did they ever actually attempt the actual?
Oh yes, yeah. It was one of many attempts on Hitler's life, and he dodged them all. He seemed to have a sort of sixth sense for escaping that kind of danger. If you've seen the movie Valkyrie, you know about one of them, the Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah, I did see that many years ago. That was a true story, huh?
That was a true story. Yeah, about Colonel von Stauffenberg, who tried to blow up. He planted a bomb in a meeting that Hitler was going to attend, and Hitler sat down just by happenstance in a part of the room, such that one of the pillars that was supporting the room was between him and the bomb. So when the bomb blew up, it shredded his clothes, but he was unharmed.
And with Bonhoeffer, did they actually plant the bomb? Did it actually go off?
No. Well, so the way the bomb plot works is Hitler's going to be visiting a military museum, and the man who's going to be giving him a tour is a fellow military officer, and he is carrying a bomb I don't want to give too much away.
Okay.
And his plan is when he and Hitler are in the right place, he's going to set the bomb off. The bomb has a fuse that, things were more primitive back then. Bomb has a fuse that takes a minute or two to work. And at a certain point, after he set off the bomb, Hitler turns to him and says, "I'm leaving," and turns and goes, gets in his car and drives away. I'll leave it there, and you
Okay.
can watch the movie and find out how that part ends.
Well,
I don't think it's a spoiler to say that Hitler was not assassinated in that plot.
the okay, so was this so that he was part of the plot of killing Hitler, died at 39, but what did his life, he didn't accomplish the ultimate mission of taking Hitler out. What did his life accomplish?
I think in his time, he was one of the comparatively rare German voices who was in opposition to Hitler from the beginning, who actually survived all the way through almost to the end of the war. There seemed to he was truly protected, I think, miraculously from imprisonment or murder, right up sort of almost until the very end of his life, and he was able to speak out both in Germany and abroad against what the Nazis were doing. He was able to rally many in church leadership to the cause of the confessing church and to the resistance. One of whom was Martin Niemöller, who was a World War II submarine captain who became a pastor, and desperately wanted to believe that if he could just talk to Hitler, he could kind of turn him around, help him understand that he was doing wrong things. And it was really Bonhoeffer's witness to him that got him to realize that that wasn't going to work and to join the resistance. So he had an influence on countless numbers of people. He was influential in saving many, many lives, Jewish lives, but also the lives of many other people. So he, both on a kind of individual level and on a societal level, was a tremendous witness. And I think it was true not just in his generation, but it's been true in subsequent generations. His books still sell millions of copies around the world, and he's influential to this day. And I think an example of what one man can do in utter darkness, in situations that look hopeless. You can shine a light that never goes out.
Corrie ten Boom, wasn't she also a part of hiding the Jews? And
Yes.
It's been so long since I heard her story, but
Yeah.
Did they know each other? Were they were they connected in any way?
I don't. Bonhoeffer had a pretty good network. There's a famous theologian named Karl Barth who was living in Switzerland at the time, and they corresponded. There's an English bishop named Bell that he wrote with and exchanged letters with, spoke to, visited with. I don't know. Corrie ten Boom lived in the Netherlands under when it was occupied by Germany, so I don't know that they would have known each other. Yeah, I'm not sure, but it is surprising the number of connections you find. And Bonhoeffer was very well traveled. He spent some time in Spain, which is not covered in our film, but he was there. He was widely traveled, well traveled around the world, and knew many people in sort of many different parts of society.
When's the film coming out again? 22nd of November, did you say?
Yeah, if you go to angel.com/Bonhoeffer,
Okay.
you'll get a window that will tell you when and where you can buy tickets in your area. Yeah, so Thursday, November 21. It's available in many places on that day. The official opening day is November 22,
Okay.
which is 3 weeks from tomorrow. But you may have an opportunity to see it before. And if I could just make a pitch, a lot of people don't know that the most important weekend for a film is the opening weekend. If you could buy a ticket and see it that weekend, if you want to support the film, that's the best way to do it. Just take a group of 30 people or so of your closest friends and just fill up a theater and watch it on that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. We'd be grateful.
We're going to go see it, and we'll put a link to the actual movie. And there's probably a trailer, right? Too.
Yeah, there's a trailer which has its own story. If you go to YouTube and look for a Bonhoeffer movie, it'll pop up. I think it has about 750,000 views now on YouTube. Yeah, it's got millions of views across all platforms. YouTube, it's I think 750,000. But it's the opening scene is you're looking at the tires of a bus as it kind of screeches to a stop. That's how you know you've got the right one. And it's say the Bonhoeffer name and then Angel Studios. And there's a musical surprise in there, which this is another. The trailer is so beautiful. I was on a show yesterday, and the host said, "No exaggeration, this is the greatest movie trailer that I've ever seen."
Wow.
He said, well, I've seen a lot of trailers for a lot of movies, and this is my favorite. So I still get goosebumps when I watch that trailer.
We'll put a link to that too, to the trailer. Hey, one last question. Got any new projects coming up?
Man, I wish I could talk about that. I do.
I knew that was coming. It's a top secret. His Majesty's Secret Service.
My hands are tied. I will tell you about another film of mine that came out this year that I'm incredibly proud of. It's a documentary about the legendary Pittsburgh Pirate baseball player named Roberto Clemente, who was just an amazing man from Puerto Rico who made it big in U.S. baseball in the 60s and 70s, and was also just a civil rights icon, very philanthropic, an amazing life story. And we premiered that at the South by Southwest Film Festival in Austin in March. Got the audience award there.
Wow!
And great things are going to happen for that movie. I'm really stoked about it, and so delighted to have been part of that producing team.
When does it come out?
Don't have a release date for you yet. But,
well, maybe we could do another.
I would love
another
that.
interview.
I would love that.
Hey, John, thank you so much for being on. So looking forward to this Bonhoeffer movie. I think it's going to be an inspiration. And where our country is right now, I mean, we could use that kind of inspiration, right? People taking a stand. We have so much crazy stuff going on in our country with the LGBTQ movement. And now, what's happening with our children, transgendering our children. And so many people are just standing by and watching the train go by. And I think this will really help to inspire a movement in our own country about taking a stand for righteousness. So appreciate you, John. Have always appreciated you and Heidi. Love you a ton. And praying for this movie to be such a success.
Thank you.
God bless you. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you. You too.